Welcome to the Totally Honest Cooking Show. I'm Mark. Today we are doing Huevos Rancheros, a Tex-Mex style breakfast with a lot of different variations. Look, man, there's a lot of ways we can do this. I thought about doing like a crazy 7-layer version. I thought about doing a more traditional version. And really, this is the kind of recipe where you learn components and then you pick the components you want and you put them together and you make food. Like with most such dishes, the first thing we got to do is cut up a bunch of cilantro. You can do this roughly, you can do this finely. Go with your preferred form factor. Like I said, this is one of those recipes you can pretty much do what you want. But I am just gonna chop it down a little bit. Once you've got your cilantro down to your preferred form factor, we can get cooking. We're gonna start with a can of pinto beans. This is a 29-ounce can. I think the recipe that I'm using for this said 2 15-ounce cans, so more or less the same thing, right? So we have washed and rinsed our can of beans. If you want to soak your own beans, you can. Most people use the pinto beans because the pinto beans are the butterier bean. We're going to start off by cutting down a giant onion. Do you need a giant onion? No. But several of these recipes call for onions, so it's better to just have the onion, right? I've halved my onion. I'm gonna dice it up as per my usual dicing specifications. Once you've cut your onion up, add some olive oil to a saucepan. That might be too much. Oh well. We're heating the olive oil over medium heat. Once it's shimmering, we're gonna add in our onions. About half a cup. And then a big old pinch of salt. This is kosher salt. I did 2 pinches because the first pinch wasn't big enough. You don't need to do 2 pinches. And I didn't chop these onions up finely enough. So getting some with the spatula. Again, please remember, you don't need to be perfect. Well, that's going. Get yourself... Ooh. That was almost a whoopsie doodle, my friends. Well, that's going. You're going to get yourself a half a teaspoon of chili powder, which I totally did a full teaspoon. And 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. Fun fact, cumin is always used to season beans, and supposedly it helps with gas. I don't know whether that's true. And while we're waiting on that, we're going to prep a lime. Give it a roll. And we're just cooking these onions till they're translucent. Next thing on the list is 2 cloves of garlic. These can be pressed or minced. I'm always going to press if it says press or minced, because pressing is easier. Okay, once it starts looking clear, we're just going to add our spices and our garlic. And then we're going to give it a stir. Not for too long, just like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Again, if you want, you can make your own chili powder. Some chefs will tell you to do that. You're binging with Babai will tell you to grind your own spices, and it is like 20% better to grind your own spices. It will always taste better if you grind your own spices, but you don't always have time for that. So you have my permission to skip that. Okay, now we're putting in the beans. We're adding half a cup of water. We're stirring it up. Then we're covering it up. Well, that's going. I'm going to clear off some space on the cutting board. Then I'm taking 2 dried ancho chilies and I'm microwaving them for about 15 seconds. That makes these a little bit more pliable. So now we're removing the stems and we're pouring the seeds out into our garbage bowl. The easiest way is going to be to open it up with a pair of scissors. And you're going to do the same thing on the other one. And these we're just going to set right here for later. About 5 minutes have passed. Removing the lid, and we're crushing up at least half of the beans. And we're lowering the heat to low. You could also use the back of a fork for this. You know, you do you. The recipe I'm basing this on says to your preferred consistency. So, see how well you want it to go. Now let's talk mashers. I prefer this kind of masher because nothing gets stuck in it. It does make it a little bit harder to mash things up sometimes. Like, you'll note that I did have to make multiple passes on this. Whereas if I'd had the round kind with all the cross hatches, I've got one around here somewhere, but I'm not going to go find it for you. That would have been easier. If you notice that the consistency is getting too thick, you can add a little bit more water. After about 3 minutes, they should be ready. So we're going to kill the heat. Remove from heat. We've killed the heat. We've moved it to the other burner to remove the heat. We're adding the juice of half a lime. And we're adding a couple tablespoons of our cilantro. And we're just stirring that in. Now, if you wanted this to be more quote-unquote restaurant style, you could add in some sour cream and probably Monterey Jack cheese would be my guess. Some places do use white Velveeta because it melts a treat. Okay, that looks good. And we're going to keep the cover on this and we're going to do the rest of the stuff we were doing. Okay, now we're going to start a salsa. Tablespoon of oil down. 4 cloves of garlic. Now we're going to slice our garlic thin. By the way, don't start heating the oil before you do this. That was a bad idea. I had to turn off the heat for a little while. And then, remember those peppers from before? Those chilies? We're cutting them into strips. In fact, again, we're cutting them into strips, and the easiest way to do this is just to take a pair of scissors. You're going to be tempted to use your knife, but look at how fast this is. Okay, once it's shimmering, we're going to add in our garlic. And then we're adding in the strips that we made. And all we're doing here, really, is reminding the pepper what it is. You can even whisper to it and say, "Remember who you are," like you're in a Disney movie or something. It's fun. Oh, we were supposed to add the onions instead of we were supposed to add the onions instead of the chilies, but that's okay. Whoopsie doodle. I am going to take those skins out just so that they don't burn. That will probably be okay, even if you don't pull those out, but you know, why not? So we were supposed to add the chili strips when the onions started to brown, like they are now, along with half a teaspoon of oregano. And again, you're just waking up the dried flavors. You're only giving them a few seconds. They don't need a lot. Then we're adding a can of crushed tomatoes. Both Babish and Kenji, using pretty much the same recipe, have said fire roasted. So use fire roasted if you can get them. I couldn't, and that's okay. Okay, so we're just gonna swirl that around. Then We've got some chili peppers and adobo sauce from a can, like God intended. And we're going for 2. 1. 2. Now you want some of that. Then we're going to swirl that in too. Then we're going to, once it starts to bubble, we're going to reduce the heat and let it simmer like this for about 10 minutes. Well, that's bubbling away. We're going to go ahead and make a basic guacamole. I'm starting with 1 jalapeno pepper. And you're going to go ahead and core it. Easiest way to core it's just to take a spoon. Note that a half teaspoon is probably not the easiest way to do that, but it's what I had on hand. Then we're going to cut it into strips. Then we're going to cut the strips down into manageable pieces. Now, I'm going to level with you, Internet. Guacamole, in my opinion, needs 4 ingredients. Avocados, obviously. Lime juice. Cilantro. And garlic. There's some garlic kicking around here somewhere. I don't know. That's it. Salt and pepper. You know, but that goes into everything. Right. Jalapeno is a bonus. Tomato would be a bonus, but we already have tomato bubbling away over here. Don't feel like you need to add a bunch of crap just for the sake of adding it. Now, your avocado. Find one that's ripe. That means you want it to squeeze, but you don't want it squishy. Like if you touch it and there's a huge divot, you got a problem with your life. Stone should come out pretty simply. And you just pull the... If it's ripe, you should be able to just pull the... If it's ripe, you should more or less just be able to pull it right off. Don't forget to stir that mixture on the stove occasionally. Next up, garlic. Now, usually when it comes to guacamole, I prefer as much garlic as I can get my hands on. Like, riddle me with garlic. And I'm just going to crush my 4 cloves of garlic directly into my avocados. Then I'm using about half my jalapeno. And most of the remaining onion. And I'm squeezing a large volume of juice out of this half a lemon I still have. We'll see how it is in a minute before I just mash it all up with like a maniac with this potato masher. Same one from earlier. Then I'm going to add another half a lime worth of juice. Some will say that's too much lime juice, but I love lime juice. Then a big pinch of salt. Handful of cilantro. That was too much cilantro. Give her a mix. And there we go. Kind of a quick bootleg guacamole. So now what I'm going to do is stick it in the fridge with plastic wrap tight on top. And we'll be ready for that when we're done with our other things. Okay, now it's time to finish our salsa. We're going to add in some loose leaves of cilantro. Then we're putting in the juice of a lime. Then we're getting out our motorboat. You could throw this in a blender, and I think I would prefer to throw it into a blender because it's just easier this way. But I already created a lot of dishes. So we're gonna try this. The recipe says to do this, but it makes me nervous, which is why I should do it. Okay, right away I'm seeing that I should have done this in a small saucepan. And I'm seeing that it didn't really do anything other than splatter on me. So let's get the blender out. Now this last bit is optional and not really in the realm of Mexican food, but I got this from J. Kenji Lopez Alt, and you're just adding a tablespoon of soy sauce to this. And I think the reason you're doing it is for salt and kind of an umami thing. I was gonna cut out the soy sauce, but I trusted it on the fish sauce in the chicken paprikash, and that was amazing. So why not? Okay. As you can see, that was much more successful than using the motorboat. And I didn't get any on the wall this time. Yeah, you couldn't see it, but there was some on the wall. Okay, now we're in the home stretch. This was intended to be an easy day. I did not realize it was going to take this many. I didn't realize that my plan kind of got out of hand. I'll be honest with the internet, I was going to start with fried potatoes on this, and I think we're leaning more toward that funky 7-layer Mexican pizza style sort of thing. And I'm okay with that. Plans change, and I'm hungry. Okay, so I'm heating a bunch of vegetable oil in my cast iron skillet. And then I got my favorite egg pan over here. Okay, now we're frying these. We're not going crispy, we're going kind of a crispy soft, if that makes sense. And that looks like it's coming in. Well, ideally, you're going to save the egg for last because it's going to cook the fastest. These are not ideal times, however. It needs to be hotter. Okay, so if you want to get this nice and crispy, the secret is to get the oil all over the egg. Once the egg is starting to look good, you can cut the heat. Kind of let the edges crisp up this way. It might take a practice tortilla or two. Sometimes it takes me a couple. Probably because I'm using too much oil. When you're using the cast iron for this, you want to get just the right temperature, and it can be hard. But again, remember, the goal of this show is not perfect food, it's delicious food. This is about the texture you want, though. You want it crunchy, but not like inflexible. And now we're ready to serve. Check everything for warmth. We were buggering around a little bit there. Starting with the refried. Then a little bit of Monterey Jack cheese. Then another one of these hot tortillas. Then a layer of our salsa. I thought about layering on the guac. We're just going to put the guac on the side. Then I'm going to drizzle on a little bit of Mexican crema. Well, not really drizzle. We'll say spread. If you can't get Mexican crema in the store, you can kind of make an approximation using sour cream and lime juice. It's really not the same, though. I can't stress that enough. Now we're going to take our crispy edged fried egg. Seat that right in the middle. For plating, we'll put some cilantro. And the remainder of that last lime. And just a little bit of additional cheese. And at long last, our Huevos Rancheros is ready to eat. Maybe add just a little bit more salsa over here. Just for color contrast. There we go. Okay, our Huevos Rancheros is ready to eat. Let's see, can I get a shot without the shadow? The shadow knows. I made this Huevos Rancheros, and you can too. Okay, you know what time it is. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Maybe click that little bell. And I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.